What comes to mind when somebody mentions Resident Evil 4? Groundbreaking? The most influential action game ever? Addictive? Fun? I'm betting that each of those springs to mind, and rightfully so. Resident Evil 4 is considered a landmark game today, and sits proudly amongst the Marios and Sonics and Metal Gear Solids of the world. But the reality of what Resident Evil 4 represents is something a bit different, and that is what I intend to explore today. Resident Evil 4 had a complicated development. Capcom couldn't seem to figure out what to do with the series, as evidenced by the fact that it saw at least 3 concepts throughout its development. Things didn't come together until series creator Shinji Mikami took over the project and decided to scrap almost everything that made the series special up to that point. So what exactly made these games so special? Let's assume you have somehow never played a survival horror game before. How did the genre get its hooks in us fans? To figure this out, we need only look at the original Resident Evil. Isolation is a core component of survival horror. Cramped corridors, tight hallways, and very few friendly characters to interact with. Limited resources create a constant sense of insecurity and anxiety. Every time you leave a save room, you're left wondering if you're bringing enough ammo or healing items with you. More importantly, both ammo and healing items are in short supply, so it's highly unlikely that you'll have enough to contend with every foe that comes your way anyways. Limited inventory space complements the limited resources found within the game. You could opt to carry every bit of ammo with you at all times, but where do you put that mission critical item you never expected to find? This sort of situation forces you to consider each and every move very carefully. Combat in survival horror is almost always optional. Each zombie you encounter will have you wondering if you should shoot it or just try to run by. And this extends to the boss enemies in a lot of cases as well. Environments are also very open in a survival horror game, with paths that regularly loop back on themselves and allow you to revisit areas in order to find new secrets and items. I bring this up because it's important to understand why I love this genre so much. Trying to find the best path forward while maximizing resources makes for a surprisingly addictive gameplay loop. So why did Mikami see fit to ditch so many of these elements of the genre he helped to create? According to a variety of sources, this drastic change in direction stemmed from the declining sales of the most recent entries in the series. Resident Evil Code Veronica originally launched as a Sega Dreamcast exclusive and was later ported to the PS2 and GameCube. I think it's pretty reasonable to assume that the smaller install base of the Dreamcast played a large role in this title's lackluster sales. And the ports to the PS2 and GameCube were just that, ports, and everyone knew this. Perhaps the game would have seen greater success if it had launched day and date on PS2, Dreamcast, and GameCube. The Resident Evil remake launched exclusively on the Nintendo GameCube, a console that was practically floundering right out of the gate. Now, I love the GameCube, and I think it's wildly underrated. But the fact of the matter is that it was the third best-selling console of the 6th generation, only besting Sega's Dreamcast. The limited install base couldn't have helped matters here, despite the game itself being absolutely amazing. Resident Evil 0 hit the GameCube exclusively shortly after the remake had landed. This was an all-original Resident Evil title and was likely expected to be the next big thing in the franchise, but it landed with a thud. Not because the game was bad or anything, but likely because it was exclusive to the GameCube. You've no doubt noticed a trend here. Each of these original entries hit consoles that were not PlayStation. Except the PlayStation is where fans of the series were playing their games. So when a new entry landed on the likes of the Dreamcast or GameCube, these players simply didn't have access to these games. Instead, PlayStation owners were limited to side story entries in the series, games like Resident Evil Survivor, Dead Aim, or the Outbreak games. So it's kind of easy to see why the series was struggling at this point, especially if you add in the plain old franchise fatigue amidst all this. Undeterred, Capcom pressed forward with a deal to bring several exclusive games to Nintendo's powerhouse console, and Resident Evil 4 was easily the most anticipated of them all. I was wildly excited for this game. The announcement came shortly after Resident Evil Remake and Resident Evil Zero released on the Nintendo GameCube, and given the quality of those two games, I couldn't wait to see what Capcom had in store. The lead up to RE4's release was both exciting and confusing. Following the release of Onimusha on PS2, news broke that the game actually started life as a concept for Resident Evil 4 and on the PS1 of all things. Then, while RE2's Hideki Kamiya was still heading up the RE4 project, word came out that Devil May Cry also began life as RE4. Both of these games showed that Capcom was eager to push the series into a more action-focused territory. At this point, it was hard to make sense of the situation. Was RE4 going to be something completely disconnected from prior games? I mean, this kind of made sense considering the conclusive nature of Code Veronica's ending, but it seemed like the Resident Evil name might be used to describe a type of game going forward rather than a specific series, almost taking the place of the survival horror moniker itself. Then we started to see some gameplay demos. The now infamous Hallucination and Hookman iterations of the game were shown, and Leon S. Kennedy was confirmed to return as the new game's protagonist. I was stoked. Not only was RE2's protagonist returning to the fold, but he'd be starring in what looked like a truly terrifying adventure, complete with cutting-edge, GameCube-powered graphics. Then, all went quiet. Fast forward a bit, and Resident Evil 4 was finally spinning up in my GameCube. My immediate impressions were very positive. The game looked unbelievable for the time, even with its brown and gray-laden graphics.
1998. I'll never forget it. It was the year when those grisly murders occurred in the Arklay Mountains.
As I listened to Leon recall the events of RE2, I couldn't help but admire the quality of the voice acting. Each entry has seen a clear step up in this department, and RE4 seemed to be no different. Then the car stops, and Leon sets out toward an old village. The tank controls are still present, but feel a lot more natural with the new camera perspective. So I come across this house and promptly enter, because, that's what you do. The homeowner is acting a bit casual about Leon entering his home uninvited, but decides that Leon must die for his transgression. Obviously, Leon being the murderous hero that he is, this doesn't happen, and the villager is liberated from the world of the living. Before too long, I found myself battling the people of this village, frantically running for dear life. Then, after what felt like an eternity, a bell rings, and they just stop.
Oh, la campana. Es hora de rezar. Tenemos que irnos. Lord Sattler.
Where's everyone going? Bingo?
At long last, I've played Resident Evil 4. It was scary, intense, and uncomfortable. And I couldn't wait to continue my journey. So I pushed through for several more hours, but my excitement had slowed to a steady simmer rather than a raging boil. This is when it hit me. This isn't a very good Resident Evil game. I was a bit dismayed. I was making progress, but had yet to return to previously visited locations. Then I noticed how the environments had little to no locked doors or areas left to return to, and enemies were dropping ammo and healing items left and right. I couldn't help but feel a bit betrayed at this point. I mean, where are the survival elements I've come to expect? Things didn't get any better as the story continued to unfold. There was seemingly no connection to past events. I mean, sure, it's a reboot of the series and therefore shouldn't have to adhere to old story threads, but it's almost as if the first 4 games in the series just never happened. And the enemies, the Las Plagas, well, they are essentially zombies, really annoying zombies. They bob and weave to avoid my attacks, but this isn't too dissimilar to the shambling corpses I dealt with before, except they can use guns and chainsaws. But maybe this is okay, right? Then I discovered El Gigante, a seriously big, ogre-like monstrosity that does sort of fit in with the big bads of the previous games. I mean, Yawn was a giant snake and Black Tiger was a giant spider, so this kind of fits. Somewhere along the way, Mendez shows up as well, and again, this sort of fits with the RE mold. He comes off as a stoic cross between Nemesis and Albert Wesker, and that really does work in a lot of ways. But that's when it happened. I gave up. This wasn't Resident Evil. It wasn't bad per se, it just wasn't the game I thought I was getting. Years would go by before I bothered to pick up the game again. I'd complete a slew of Resident Evil games after this point. Resident Evil Remake, 5, 6, Revelations, and Revelations 2, Resident Evil 2 Remake, 3 Remake, Resident Evil Village. Then the news broke that Capcom was remaking Resident Evil 4 next, and I decided it was high time I finished this original game. Before starting, I ran into an immediate concern. The controls for the original GameCube game were not the most inviting thing to return to, so I figured the Wii release might be a bit more accommodating. But it didn't take too long before I realized that no, this would not work either. The pointer-based aiming was great, but all of the rest of the waggle-tastic setup left a lot to be desired. Ultimately, I landed on the PC release for a number of reasons. Most notably, the remastered RE4 had several control options. And with the PC being what it is, I'd be able to fix another issue I had with the game: the narrow field of view. Now, don't get me wrong, a narrow FOV is essential to any survival horror game, but that's just it. This isn't a survival horror game. So, with the PC version set up and ready to go, I finally returned to Resident Evil 4 with the intent of finally completing it. And I never want to do that again. I've already detailed a number of deviations this game takes from the survival horror formula, but the game didn't stop there. The story too veered further into obnoxious territory as I progressed. To be fair, my beloved Code Veronica did this as well, but not to the same degree. To demonstrate this, we need not look further than this man-child.
I was starting to wonder when you might notice us.
Who are you?
Me llamo Ramon Salazar, the 8th Castellan of this magnificent architecture. I have been honored with the prodigious power from the great Lord Sadler.
Salazar is an eccentric character, which isn't a huge problem. But it's the way he and Leon talk to each other. Like, what is this? Some kind of lame-ass 90s era sitcom?
Don't you worry about her. Oh yes, I let our miserable insects out for some exercise down in the sewer.
Thanks. That should keep me company, 'cause boredom kills me.
I look forward to our next encounter in another life. So maybe you have 9 lives, but it doesn't matter now, Mr. Kennedy. I've sent my right hand to dispose of you.
Your right hand comes off?
Say whatever you please. Die, you worm!
Oh, but it gets worse. You see, for some inexplicable reason, Salazar saw fit to commission a robotic golem of himself. Its purpose? To provide Leon with some hot platforming action? Oh, and to chase down Leon before falling to its doom, of course. Like, how am I supposed to take any of this seriously? I understand that Resident Evil has always been a bit out there, but Nemesis, Tyrant, or any of the other mutated monstrosities found in prior games were coherent to the overall lore of Resident Evil. Umbrella Corporation performed biological experiments leading to the creation of those characters. They all made sense. They fit. And it doesn't stop with Salazar either. Even the big bad has these incredibly stupid exchanges via codec that make me really question whether or not the developers knew they were making a Resident Evil game.
I have an idea. Since you're here, why don't I introduce you to it? It should keep you busy.
Can't remember the name, huh? A senior moment, perhaps.
Enjoy the fun.
Fortunately, the game did remain fun throughout, with some great action set pieces to boot. It's honestly kind of hard to complain about the actual gameplay at all. I just wish it were a Resident Evil game. The upgrade system is great too. There are tons of weapons to find and upgrade throughout the game, and using them is equally fun. It's a genuinely great action horror title overall, just an awful survival horror game. The worst part about all this is that it didn't have to be this way, as evidenced by the Resident Evil 4 remake. I will definitely cover that game at some point, but suffice to say, it's a lot closer to the survival horror formula than this game is. I've already detailed a number of issues I have with this game, but let's summarize. There's no real backtracking to speak of, meaning there is a serious lack of cohesion within the game world. It's just a straight path from point A to point B 99% of the time. The story has so little connection with previous games that it might as well have been left out entirely. Capcom could have released this game under a different name, like it did with Devil May Cry and Onimusha, and no one would think twice about it. I'm not against a reboot of the story, but this didn't do it for me at all. The game is almost completely devoid of resource management. Yes, you do technically have limited inventory space, but it's large enough that you rarely have to think about it. Couple this with the fact that enemies regularly drop ammo and healing items, and you have a game that doesn't come close to resembling survival horror. And lastly, the story and characters here are largely dumb. A few stand out above the rest, like Mendez, but by and large, they suck. And the dialogue is almost a non-stop cringe fest. And not in a so bad as good kind of way. So Resident Evil 4 is clearly not a survival horror game at all. It's a decent horror game and a great action game, but it has the Resident Evil name attached, and with that comes certain expectations. When you boil it down, the only effort made to connect this game with prior games is the inclusion of Leon, Ada, and Wesker. And I think this game's rough controls and dated graphics make it really hard to go back to. Sure, you can adjust, but why? Resident Evil 5 and 6 are both similar to this one, but play a lot better while having much more interesting stories, which are coincidentally more tightly woven to the series lore too. Even the Revelations sub-series of games do a better job of embracing this action focus while still maintaining elements of Resident Evil and, by extension, survival horror. This may come off as nitpicking to some of you, but as a huge fan of this series, this game is sort of a low point for me. As fun as it is on its own, I can't ignore the fact that it's supposed to be a Resident Evil game. And its success, in spite of its shortcomings, derailed the series as a whole for years. And I can't help but feel a bit betrayed by that. But I also can't recommend against playing this game. While I don't think it's a good Resident Evil title, it's still a blast to play. It has all the right systems in place to make for a good time, so long as you forget about its ties to the Resident Evil series. Hey guys, if you managed to make it to the end of this video without clicking away in a fit of rage, I salute you. Seriously. I knew this video would ruffle a few feathers, but I thought my perspective would add some much needed flavor to the conversation. Anyways, if you enjoyed the video, be sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and let me know what you think of Resident Evil 4 as a Resident Evil game. Thanks for watching.